Hello.
I
We are
was
here.
really
We're
getting into
live.
that, man. Like
I
that was a
know, I know. I
groovy.
kind of wanted to just keep playing the music because it was really nice.
That was amazing.
Very fun.
So I checked. We are actually live here. So thank you, everybody who's watching. Welcome to our Seek Safely Kirby Jam live stream week-long bonanza. We're excited to be trying something a little bit different this year. And yeah, so tonight is all about kind of a year in review, which is something that we typically do at our Kirby Jam events. We give people kind of an overview of what we've done in the past year. And because the Kirby Jam is all about asking people for their financial support, especially, we like to let everybody know what we've done with that support over the past year. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So I've got with me Dr. Doyle and Ginny.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
I mean, the Kirby Jam, not mostly about asking for folks' financial support. It has served many functions over the course of the years. Like, so if I can take everybody back to kind of what the Kirby Jam has been in years past, Kirby Brown. So for those who are just joining us, probably already know. Like, so Kirby Brown, the daughter of Ginny Brown, our founder, the sister of Jean Brown, my co-host on the Seek Safely podcast, lost her life, unfortunately, as part of she was participating in a personal growth, a personal development, self-help week-long event run by a charlatan who is still operational. We'll probably talk about that in a little bit, about James Arthur Ray's latest offensive offerings into the world. But Kirby and two other people lost their lives there. Lots of other people were made injured or sick in that event. Seek Safely was founded by Kirby's family. Ethics and accountability in the self-help industry is our mission. But we wanted to kind of early on, like we wanted to have an event that commemorated Kirby in the spirit of Kirby. I never knew Kirby Brown. I feel like I know Kirby Brown really well. I know her family really well at this point. What I can say, I think I know about Kirby. And I know like later this week, you guys are going to have like a full episode of like just stories about Kirby Brown.
That's right. Next Friday.
I've talked to so many family members who knew Kirby Brown really, really well. I've heard her described as the action figure cousin.
Yeah.
She was a music lover.
She was that. Yes, she was that. She was also the action figure daughter.
Right?
Yeah.
At the time she was quite young.
She was an adventurer and a seeker. And so when it came time for the Brown family to commemorate Kirby Brown with an event, and I mean, yes, it's partly a fundraising event, but it's also just an event to commemorate Kirby and who she was, the only event possible was a jam, was a Kirby Jam. And so for years we've gathered in New York around the Brown family, and we've had an event, and we often invite musical acts, local musical acts. In fact, last time we had Slam Allen. You remember this? Last year, Slam Allen.
Fabulous. Kirby loved music, and when she lived in the Baja, she would often be going to events where local musicians were jamming. So it was one of her favorite things to do. So we wound up starting, when we began this yearly fundraiser, we were calling it the Kirby Jam. So today, in my home here in Westtown, New York, we did do a little open house to thank the people, local people who are here, and some of my family members, just to say thank you and to kick off the week with a little bit of a party, because I couldn't imagine doing this without having the stress of a party. Without having, friends over and good food and fun music. And we did that. We had a lovely day today. It was really fun. A number of people stopped by, came over, and we were able to just enjoy each other's company, listen to some good music, have some good food, and it was quite lovely.
I'm glad you got to have your party.
Every year, you guys don't even know. So I can give you guys some background, the audience watching this. So every year we approach the Kirby Jam, and I watch Jenny Brown's the veins on the side of her head start to pulse with the stress of planning this party. And every year I say to myself, we should really do something different so Jenny doesn't have the stress of planning this party. So this year, and I also had the thought, gosh, what can I do to just make my board of directors work about 10 times as hard this week as we typically do? Let's do a full week of live streams. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's put that on everybody's plate. We said to Jenny, hey, Jenny, you won't have to plan this party. And Jenny said, well, we'll just see about that. And so she did have a party, but it's been a good time. It's been a good party.
Well, it was quite simple, really. It was not like when we do an event at the Powelton Club, like the last couple of years. No, it was quite different. And years in the past when we've also had a golf tournament at the same time. So this was, just people stopping by the house, and we had drinks and sandwiches and some music playing. So yeah, no, it was it was just nice. It was a nice way to start this week, which we're really hoping that going to a live streaming event is going to help us reach a whole lot more people, because in the past, my family and friends have really been, huge supporters. And we really need to expand our donor base, or they're just going to divorce me. So we really we want to do that. And one of the things we need to talk about to share with our audience is how you and Jean have really helped to expand the reach of the organization, and we're bringing in people whom we didn't know before this year, but are very interested in ethics and safety in the industry. Because this organization started because of Kirby and what happened to Kirby and James Shore and Liz Newman as well, how to commemorate them. And this is what brought the problems to our attention. But this is about an industry, and her legacy is about helping this industry improve itself, become more ethical and safer, and also to help seekers be more discerning and help them to maybe ask themselves more questions and understand exactly what they're signing into when they go to self-help events or even pick up self-help materials, the benefits and the limitations of that kind of intervention in their life. So that's we're really looking now to expand to make sure we're reaching the larger audience of people that are just in the self-help world.
Yeah. And that's a good segue for a couple of things that I want to talk about. For one, I do want to reiterate that while as we look to expand our reach, and that's part of the idea of having this event in this way so that it's not so kind of locally contained, it can be available to a broader audience. I will say, though, we are very grateful to that audience that has been with us for so many years. We have a number of sponsors who show up every single year for this event, and give us money, give us donations for our auction, give us their support and their encouragement, and we always want to thank them. I will show a few of those names at the end, but I want to mention MediaCom. Every year they show up, they donate. Our accountant organization that lends us their professional services for free, Tipping Point Advisors, Stone Magnanini Law, and then we have a number of other individual sponsors, First Federal Savings of Middletown, the Hutchings Insurance Agency. We have a lot of great sponsors, and then also individuals who have been with us for years, and we're so grateful to them. But yes, we are looking to kind of move and broaden our impact. So on that note, one of the big things that we did in 2023 was something that we've talked about for many years, and we finally got it going. And that was creating the Seek Safely podcast. So that's taken a lot of our time this year, right, Dr.
We have a
Glenn?
podcast? We have a podcast? We
A
do
year
it?
now. We got a podcast for a year.
Oh my God, I'll never forget so we had recorded like the first actually couple episodes, and we had submitted them to our editing team at Citizens of Sound. And when the first episode finally went up on Apple Podcasts, I'll never forget Gene Brown texting me, says, "Congratulations, you're now a podcaster." And I'm like, this is fantastic, because people had asked me for a really long time, Doc, when are you going to do a podcast? And my answer, and you guys know, like, my answer has always been, does the world not have enough white guys with podcasts? I think I hear the sound of my own voice enough, like during the week. But doing a pod for Seek Safely and specifically with Gene is really probably the only way I could have gotten sucked into doing my own podcast. And we just finished up. Can you believe it? We just finished up the second season of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe we lasted a couple seasons at least, and it's only growing?
And there will be a third season.
Yeah.
And we get it after this week. We'll be able to start recording more. Our editors are probably like, "Where are you guys? What are you doing?" Yeah. We're here. Don't worry. We'll be back.
our poor editors, our poor editors at Citizens of Sound. So a lot of you guys probably know, like, I mean, I'm sure there are people who are watching right now who have experience with podcasts, either hosting them or editing them, producing them, whatnot. You guys know how a podcast is done. You take kind of a raw cut of what is being talked about, and you have to edit it down to like a usable, like our pods are like, what are they, like 45, 50 minutes, give or take. You don't know how much I like to talk, especially about self-help. Yeah. Ginny and Gene are both going, yes, we do. Yes, we actually know. We know exactly how much. So I really like to talk about self-help. Gene really likes to talk about how much self-help is problematic. So between our two areas of strong interest, we often wind up with like a raw cut that is obscenely long. And we will get done. And I will often at the end of the raw cut, I will often apologize to our editors, be like, Chris, I so sorry. So sorry about all this. Will and Chris, just so sorry about all of this. But they shape it into this really extraordinary, tightly edited, really well, if I don't say so, really well produced podcast. Like, I actually hate listening to the sound of my own voice. Like, I do a lot of podcasts. I can't ever listen to them because, but they make my voice listenable. Mm-hmm. It is really cool.
It's pretty good.
No, it's been very good. How many people have we reached with the podcast, Gene?
We have numbers on that, don't we?
We're like over 10,000 downloads, which is quite good. Like as Glenn said, there are a lot of podcasts out there, so the competition is, numerous, but no, we're doing pretty good. I think, we average like over 600 or 700 listens per episode, which is quite good. So it seems like we have a core of listeners who are listening every week. Right. Yeah. So, and the response that we get is really good. And there are a few other podcasts out there that are kind of talking in and around this space. And what I like about what I have seen so far is that everybody's kind of coming at it from a particular angle. And I think that's important, because this whole area of self-help, there's so much to it. There are so many different types of providers out there. There are so many different, angles to some of the problems with it, whether it's how people are taken advantage of financially, or, the issue of cultural appropriation in this space, or other types of abuse. It's really pretty broad. So I think having lots of different people telling these stories in different ways, I think is really important to the place where now it's like there's a bit of a community that's kind of built up around sharing this information and trying to empower seekers. That is really encouraging. And very complementary. You know, all of these different ways of storytelling are complementary, I find.
Oh, you bet. I tell you that the thing that I probably value most, and you know, Gene, I love your take on this, because, you know, the thing that I value most about our pod is the fact that it finally gave, like, this has really been a banner year for Seek in a lot of ways, but one of the big ways is the podcast finally gave us the opportunity to really expand upon the message that begins for us. It begins with the story of the Sedona Sweat Lodge deaths. One of the challenges that our organization ran into in the early going was kind of a perception of like, well, they're invested in this because it's a personal family tragedy, right? It's this terrible accident, and what are the odds something like that will happen, right? In fact, James Arthur Ray says that himself, like it's this freak accident. What are the odds? And that's where this organization, like our involvement with this organization, started. But the podcast has really allowed us the opportunity to take that conversation and expand it, and really educate folks about the fact that, as Ginny said, this isn't about a freak accident. This is about a business and figures within that business that regularly conduct business in dangerous, unethical, non-transparent ways. You know, like a lot of times we will get contacted at Seek with media opportunities, and almost always they want to talk about Sedona. They want to talk about Sedona. They want to talk about James Arthur Ray, and we are happy to do that. But the podcast has allowed us to tell lots of stories. In fact, some stories that have really haven't seen the light of day very much. Like I'm here thinking that Peter McWilliams episode in particular, like it has really allowed us to tell stories that illustrate this is an industry-wide problem. This isn't about one bad event or one bad practitioner. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity to take that conversation that we start with Sedona and really tell more stories branching off from that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think this has also been a year that we've reached different people than we had before. And we've also had different people contacting us. I think more people contacting us to say, no one else is doing this. No one else seems to be addressing ethics and safety. People are telling stories about things maybe that have gone wrong. There's a lot of documentaries coming out about these kinds of abuses. But no one is really pointing to any kind of solution. And the fact that that's now seen, understood, and recognized is huge for us. And I think this has been a really important year for us to be able to reach more people in that broader industry and be bringing them into the work of the organization.
For sure. Yeah, and we've had some really interesting conversations this year. Like I'm thinking of, you know, we had a chat with people from the UK Paranormal Society contacted us. And what I loved about that conversation was, you know, we chatted with them and they said they're all about kind of, you know, in the UK especially, there are a lot of like ghost tours and things like that, and like old castles and old historic buildings. And they said, you know, we're all into that. That's an interest of all of ours. But then we saw all this like weird kind of stuff happening. Everything from, you know, people not being respectful or careful in these sites. Like if you're going into like a graveyard even, you know, you should be respectful, even if you're going to visit it. Down to other things like, you know, people doing a seance or something and kind of getting into some really questionable behavior with people's emotions or that kind of thing. So I loved that they, saw us and found some common ground in what we're talking about and what they're talking about. And we had a conversation to, discuss how we could kind of support one another and where we could, again, find these points of overlap. And I love that, similarly on the podcast, we've had some people on who were talking not specifically about like big group events. Like I'm thinking of Joelle Tamraz, who came on and talked about her memoir, The Secret Practice. She wasn't in like a big group, but she was in a personal relationship with a guru type. And all of the types of abuse were the same as we see in these group settings. And again, I love that people are kind of seeing the bigger picture, that it's not just about, a self-help event. It's about something bigger there that I think is starting to really click for a lot of people.
So tomorrow night, we're going to talk about the legislation. But one of the things, I think a big change that's come into the legislation is the concept of coercive control and understanding that people can be manipulated. And the tactics of coercive control are really what creates the harm that we see within the industry. And that concept being understood in domestic violence, being understood in different areas where manipulation of another person is taking place, and seeing that that's part of the origin of the problem when it comes to self-help, that when those tactics are used, people who are vulnerable become vulnerable to the practices themselves because they're effective and very powerful. So I think that's also an understanding shift that's taken place, and it's really this year. I think that's taken place, and it's taken place a little bit with the legislators, but we'll talk about that tomorrow night. But
for sure. No, we've got one of our viewers on Facebook, Shala. She commented the tarot community could use this, this conversation. There's a lot of shady ones who do a lot of damage. That's very similar. And I think that's spot on.
Big time.
Yeah.
So when the UK paranormal investigators contacted us for our input, I tried to say to Jenny and Jean, so I think you should tell them we can only help if they fly us into London. Our presence is needed, but unfortunately
we're definitely gonna have to go visit and tour some cool sites with them. That would be really fun,
right?
Yeah.
Something that occurs to me, kind of related to what we're talking about, is Jenny, you said, well, it's an industry-wide problem. And one of the obstacles that we've always faced is the perception that, well, sure, there are bad gurus out there, right? Like there are bad guys who will do bad stuff. But if that's kind of our working hypothesis about that's the problem, then the solution to the problem becomes, well, go get the bad guys, right? Like identify the bad guys and get the bad guys. And we've had plenty of that, right? I mean, James Arthur Ray stood trial, Keith Raniere stood trial, all these things. But part of our message is, well, sure, there are bad guys out there. There are plenty of bad guys out there, but they are operating within an industry that enables them and that resists accountability and transparency. Like by the very way it's designed, resists accountability and transparency.
Exactly.
And there'll always be bad guys, and we should do everything we can to, identify red flags and whatnot. But what we're really pushing for is a cultural shift that makes it harder to operate as a bad guy. Like I think about it, similarly to. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Glenn, and part of the shift, it's not just identifying what looks bad, but helping the consumer to understand what's bad and why, and to be wiser. So I think, our focus tonight is really looking at what we've done this year that's a little bit different and is kind of pushing the organization in a bigger direction, I think, and probably more effective. And then what we want to do with that going into 2024.
You bet.
Yeah.
So one of the other interesting things that happened this year was I got to take a couple of trips on behalf of Seek Safely, which is really exciting. We connected with somebody, a kind of industry insider. I want to call her Ann Peterson, who was on our podcast. She was on the first season, towards the end of the first season.
Yeah.
She invited us down to an event that she was running. She has a ton of experience in the personal development industry, running lots of different events. But she's kind of become disillusioned with some of the tactics that a lot of the bigger organizations and individuals in the industry use. So she's trying to do this kind of work in a more ethical way. So she invited us to come to one of her events where I could see operationalized lots of Seek's ideas, which was very cool. Like I could see a real conscious effort to not repeat the kind of shady sort of things that tend to happen at big events, excuse me. So that was really amazing. And, we had an opportunity there to speak about our experience and what we've learned and kind of share this message for other people, again, who are in this space, want to do this kind of work, feel like there's good to be done here, but they want to do it in a safe and ethical way. So we were able to talk about that there. The other cool trip I got to take was to Louisville, Kentucky, to the International Cultic Studies Annual Conference, ICSA. So they've been around for a long time. A lot of the people involved in this organization are former cult members themselves, and they're doing a lot to, provide resources for cult survivors, and then also, do education about the cult world and what's happening. And it was really cool being there because I was like, I'm not like a cult person. I haven't been in a cult myself, but like I connected with all of those people so easily because I think they're used to sort of being dismissed as like weird cult people. And I'm like, no, we've been saying all the time, everybody is susceptible to this kind of stuff. Nobody thinks they're joining a cult, right? So we were able to present there, which was amazing. And I got to talk about the kind of crossover between self-help and cults, how a lot of cults present themselves as self-help organizations, or how sometimes organizations that start out as something pretty benign kind of morph into a cult type thing over time. And that presentation was really well received, and we made some really interesting connections there. So that was pretty exciting as well.
And I think that's another big shift that has taken place, because for a long time, it's been very hard for us to even, people who were in Sedona did not consider themselves to be in a cult. And that was one of the things they never wanted us to say or use that word. But I think we've come to understand that self-help can be the gateway drug that brings people into a cult, that they can get so absorbed in that that particular guru or a particular practice that they're finding helpful. They get so absorbed in it that before they even realize it, it's become a cult, and they're in it and they're deep in it, and they're not even, they can't even see it. So I think understanding the connection without helping people see that we're not saying you joined a cult. What we're saying is what you joined can become a cult, and we really need to understand what that looks like and what you need to do to keep yourself aware and safe, and the people that are operating these kinds of things need to be recognized. We need to be able to spot them.
Oh, yeah. Well, and a big piece, I think, of what you're talking about, Ginny, is like you speak of self-help as the potential gateway drug to these high control groups, these cult groups. So a lot of people watching probably know that I'm a specialist in working with serious post-traumatic and dissociative disorders. And as such, I work with survivors of high control groups and high control families and high control churches every single day. And I can tell you that, getting out of an abusive family, for example, is very similar to leaving a cult. The recovery process is very, very similar. A lot of the dynamics of leaving an abusive family don't actually make sense until you frame it as, well, think about it, you're leaving a cult. And like suddenly, oh, this makes sense. But when we say that self-help is frequently the gateway drug, I will take that a step further. I would say self-help is almost always the gateway drug to a high control group. Not that every self-help leads to a high control group, but that every high control group starts out with a self-help pitch. Okay. They start out with a pitch to the tune of, we can make your life better. Very frequently, they start out with a pitch of, we can make your life better, but only if you don't question our methods. Like if you question our methods, that's your doubt. That's your lack of faith. We need you to go all in. Who do we remember said that? We need you to go all in.
Yeah. For sure.
So our associate, and it's kind of interesting because like from the beginning of the org, a lot of the folks who have reached out to us have been from that cult recovery community. And for a while we were kind of like, about that, because like, well, we're not really an org that either knows a lot at the time about cults or we're really focused on cults. Because as you said, like, I mean, the folks in Sedona didn't, think of themselves as joining a cult. Nobody thinks of themselves as joining a cult. But over the years, we've become more appreciative of how the dynamics in a high control group are always the same. Coercive control is coercive control.
Yeah.
So Jean, take us to what are some of the goals for this upcoming year?
So we'll continue with the podcast because that's been, pretty great. And we've been able to flesh out some of these ideas and add some more nuance to this conversation. So we'll continue to do that. We're also looking to continue expanding these types of connections that we're making. I definitely like to go back to ICSA this year, not just because it's in Barcelona, but maybe also because it's in Barcelona. But
it just happens to be like
it happens to be there because it's an international organization. So sometimes it's in Europe and sometimes it's in North America. But no, I think we made a lot of good connections. And one of the things that was great as well about that experience was that there were some connections that we made with people who are doing the type of research that we've like always wanted to be there that we haven't seen before. So yeah, that's definitely kind of on our radar. And something else we're looking to do is, I don't know, some of you might remember back in 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic, we did a workshop, kind of an empowerment workshop for seekers where we introduced this tool that we've developed that's kind of meant to help seekers at the start of your journey get a handle on your own personal values and goals as you head into any type of self-improvement work. So we're going to be really focused this year on different ways that we can bring that to more people, whether through like a workbook or other kinds of talks or other retreat type things like we did in 2021, because we think that's a really valuable tool. So those are definitely some of the goals for 2024. What did I leave out?
I think we're looking to expand the board. So bring some new people on the board that are members of that larger community. So we have a couple of folks in mind that we've been thinking about. that would love to have join us to help us in this outreach to the broader community.
Yeah. And of course, tomorrow night we'll be talking about our legislation.
Yes.
Which we've been talking about for a while, but that is the nature of legislation. It takes a while.
As it turns out, it takes a while.
So, no, that's real. That's a real thing. It's like, it's like the average 10 years or something like that to pass a bill. Sometimes you get things quickly, but that's not the norm. So we're on track. It's okay. But yeah, we'll be talking about that in more detail tomorrow, again at 8 p.m. Eastern time, live streaming here on Facebook and YouTube. I think most of our viewers right now seem to be on Facebook. So
you bet.
Great.
Yeah.
And I think on Thursday night, we're going to have Ask the Doc. So I think this will be an interesting evening for people to be asking Dr. Doyle questions about trauma and stress and the intersection of self-help. And where does self-help help people who are dealing with, serious anxiety, depression, mental health issues, and where can it be harmful? So I think that's going to be a really important night.
I mean, the fact is that most of the people watching this who came from my pages anyway, like they only know of me because of a self-help resource. The Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle web presence is a self-help resource. It's the 2023 version of the books that I was reading when I was a teenager that saved my life. And the fact is that most people who are struggling, whether it's with serious trauma conditions or addictions or mood disorders, whatever, self-help is usually a part. Either it's a little part or often it's a big part of our journey. So therapy is often a part of our journey. Like hospitalization can be part of our journey. But it's pretty rare that you meet somebody who has been on a mental health healing journey who isn't really familiar with certain self-help resources.
Right. So we'll talk a lot about that on Thursday night. So that's going to be something for everyone to look forward to. I think Wednesday night we're doing the highlights of the podcast. So people will get to see the highlights of the podcast. Tuesday night should be a
sizzle reel
because Dr. Glenn Doyle and Dr. Christine Whalen, who is on our board, are true self-help geeks. And you're just going to come and see just how geeky they are. So I think it'll be fun and it'll be funny because they can be very funny together. So I think this should be an interesting week. And Jean will talk a little bit about our ongoing auction. The virtual auction will be happening all through the week. So you want to check that out. I was able here in our home to display quite a few of the items. So people came in and they were able to see and touch everything, So we have some great items that you want to take a look at and bid on throughout the week. Jean, you're planning on closing the auction next Sunday, correct?
Yeah, next Sunday at 8 p.m. So,
right.
So yeah, if you go to seeksafely.org, right on the homepage, you can see kind of a schedule for the week, as well as where you can find these events. So for the most part, we're going to be live streaming like this on Facebook and YouTube. But on a couple of the nights, we'll be on Instagram. So just take a look at that schedule. You can see where the events are going to be. And also you can get a link to the auction there. You can take a look at our auction. That's like one of the fun things we've been doing for years now is our auction. People love it. And it's a great way to both support the organization and get a little something for yourself too.
And just being aware, this is a fundraising campaign. This is a fundraising week. If you feel that this information, if you feel that the mission of our organization is worthy, please help us with whatever kind of support you can give us, because otherwise we can't operate. So our budget is pretty small, and we're trying to expand, but that really means we need more support. So whatever you can donate, we would really, really appreciate that. This is the week to do it. So we can build up our coffers here so that we'll be able to do more work next year to be able to help people be safe in their self-help journeys and hopefully reach more practitioners to impact their ethics and safety in their practice. So please open your heart and your wallet so we can really keep the work of this organization going.
Yeah. So speaking of reaching more practitioners in the space, like I've got to throw this in before we leave for the evening. I think one of the most valuable things that Seek Safely does, and has done since the very beginning, is the devising of the Seek Safely promise. The organization started with the Seek Safely promise. What the Seek Safely promise is it's a statement of commitment to ethics and accountability. And it's meant for anybody who is doing business in this space. So anybody specifically, and throughout this week, we'll be talking a lot about Seek Safely's mission and kind of what goes into that mission, but just briefly. The reason we exist is because there's a subset of folks out there who are not licensed by any state. They're not licensed by any regulatory board. Like I'm a psychologist. I'm licensed in 2 states, and I've got multiple boards to which I'm accountable to. I've got the American Psychological Association I'm accountable to. Ginny is a psychotherapist. She has a code of ethics. Self-help gurus don't have that. It's one of the reasons why they're able to do business the way they are. It's one of the reasons why James Arthur Ray is able to go right back into the business, into the industry, after he got out of prison. So the fact is, this industry is woefully underregulated, and it creates that dangerous environment we were talking about. What the Seek Safely promise is a voluntary commitment to ethics and accountability. You can find it on our website, and you can also find a list of everybody who has taken the Seek Safely promise, who has made that commitment to ethics and accountability. In my mind, like I love the Seek Safely promise. I've signed the Seek Safely promise. In my mind, it doesn't go near far enough. In my mind, it's the bare minimum that you should expect from anybody who's doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
We continue to invite people who are operating in this space, whether they write books, whether they're on Instagram, whether it's, however you do your self-help thing. We continue to invite folks who are involved in this industry to take the Seek Safely promise. And we continue to invite consumers who are using these products and these services and engaging with these personalities to cross-reference. Have they taken the Seek Safely promise? It's not a guarantee of anything, right? Like anybody can take the promise. It is, however, a potential indication that A, they're aware of our organization, and B, these priorities of ethics and accountability and transparency are important enough to them that they've chosen to make that commitment.
Yeah. And so far we have over 300 people who have made that commitment. So
I know. Oh,
yeah,
it's
pretty cool. And it, it grows every week. I'd say we get more signers. So it's pretty amazing.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much, Ginny and Dr. Glenn, for joining me tonight. And tomorrow we will be back to talk specifically about our legislative effort. We'll have a message from our Senate sponsor, and we'll get into some of the, some more of the details about that. And then, like I said, go to seeksafely.org or visit us on, on Facebook at Seek Safely, on Instagram at Seek Safely, all of our social media channels. We've got information about everything that's going on this week. So we can definitely, you can get all the details about what we're doing this week. So
it's also worth mentioning that there are a variety of ways to donate this week for the Kirby Jam campaign. So if you go to either my personal Facebook page at Glenn Patrick Doyle or Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle, you could donate through a Facebook fundraiser there. And that's a secure donation through PayPal. We also have a donation page set up for, like, if you're not comfortable going through Facebook fundraisers. Pretty sure you can find that on our Facebook page, like a link to that independent site that is run by Smart Giving. It's a secure way to donate. We're also more than happy to get actual physical donations via snail mail. Please feel free. So we love you guys. We very much appreciate, again, like it's really extraordinary. This organization has been around. I need to impress this upon people. This organization has been around for like maybe 10 years and has operated the entire time. The board is a volunteer board, operate on a shoestring budget. There are like a handful of people that make this organization tick. And yet, over the course of a decade, Seek Safely has managed to become the consistent, credible voice in this conversation about ethics in the self-help industry. It's really extraordinary. And we do that with the support of people just like you. So we love you. Thank you for donating. And thank you for watching us. Thank you for listening to more of my voice.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow.
See you tomorrow night at 8. What is it? 8 Eastern, 7 Central.
That's right.
Right.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.